All right, I think we're in a good place to get started here. Looks like a really good turnout today. Thank you everyone for joining us for this discussion, for the showcase of how we are using diversion and community bridge to help prevent chronic houselessness. Quick introduction. I'm Chris, and I'm the communications specialist here with Bissell Center. I'm going to be just helping out, moderating things, making sure the slideshow is working good. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. Number one, I really encourage you to keep your microphones muted, just to make sure that everyone can hear the presentation and get as much out of it as possible. There will be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. I think for now, if anybody's running into any technical issues or having any problems with the audio on this meeting, we can put that in the chat, and then I can address questions and concerns in the chat. But I think otherwise, we should leave questions to the end of the presentation. That do a quick introduction to our presenters. We'll start off with Kendra Stoley, who's been with the not-for-profit sector for more than 10 years, helping vulnerable individuals experiencing are at risk of houselessness. She has a huge passion for operations, stakeholders to offer education and awareness of the impacts of houselessness. She likes to celebrate and share success to help create momentum for systemic change and community empowerment. Then we also have Katrina John West. She's a dedicated professional, a huge passion for making a positive impact on her community. She's been with Bissell now for a little more than 3 years, and she's been a huge driving force in the housing programs, especially through financial empowerment and eviction prevention. I'm just going to say, with financial empowerment, she did get to participate in a recent column with Alberta Views magazine that she did absolutely awesome on. I hope everybody got to see that column in Alberta Views this month. So through her project management, process improvement experience, she's a great advocate for high quality services to help benefit communities involved. And here at Bissell, Indigenous acknowledgement is incredibly important. So land acknowledgement, we recognize that we are gathered in collaboration and with joint purpose on Treaty 6 territory. This territory is the home and gathering place for a diverse Indigenous people. The Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Dakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Inuit, and many others. We know the importance of the treaty and our responsibility to these communities, and that only in partnership can we create the social change necessary to end. And as a quick recap, these are our 2 topics for the day. We're looking at diversion, which is all about preventing chronic houselessness with vulnerable populations, and eviction prevention, as demonstrated through our community bridge program, helping to ensure people with housing can keep their housing despite the challenges they may encounter. And with that, I'm ready to hand it over to Kendra. Kendra, are you ready to start presenting?
You bet. I'm actually going to take this slide, but thank you so much, Chris, for those introductions and housekeeping. We're really excited to be here today. As you guys can see, we are sharing the same screen. This is our first time doing this. So if you can't hear one of us, please put that in the chat and we'll make sure we're kind of situated a little bit better. But as you can see, this graph shows all our housing programs at Bissell Center. We like to display them on this spectrum of low intervention supports to high intervention supports. When we're talking about high intervention, it's more of those permanent wraparound supports, and then that lower intervention, lighter touch supports. At the bottom, you'll see financial empowerment. Financial empowerment is a concept of using financial empowerment interventions within different programs to boost those program outcomes, which I'll talk a little bit more later. But financial empowerment is embedded within every frontline program at Bissell to different degrees.
So we did notice that there was a gap for those that needed more light touch housing supports and eviction prevention supports within the community. So thus our diversion and community program were created. So diversion is a strategy aimed at preventing houselessness by identifying housing solutions for individuals and family facing eviction or housing instability. We offer case management focused supports without formalized intensive housing program support, such as Housing First. We work with people to identify immediate alternative housing options. We also connect people with financial assistance. We work with the community to explore different resources, identify capacity to live independently, coach through different steps to finding housing, and also offer like advocacy to landlords if there is a little bit of housing instability. Success story. We had an individual come into one of our housing workshops with an eviction notice because they were storing items on their balcony, which wasn't allowed. The navigator was able to help the participant rent a storage unit and arrange transport of the items, ultimately preventing an eviction. So this is a really good example of how this person didn't need higher intervention supports and they just needed some advocacy with their landlords and creative ways to keep their housing. Our diversion workers are frequently facilitating housing workshops. We hold housing workshops weekly at 3 EPL locations, Win House, and our own Bissell Center's community space. This is where we're really navigating their housing instability and connecting people with resources. My contact information is at the end of this presentation. So if anybody wants the time and locations of all of our workshops, please feel free to message me.
Hey, so jumping into Community Bridge, this is our main program to prevent houselessness with the primary function to prevent evictions, disconnections, or foreclosures. This program started in 2014, so it's almost been 10 years, and we initially started as just providing interest-free loans paid directly to the landlord. But during the pandemic, we were able to revamp our program, relook at how we support folks. Main thing was accessibility. Before we were just in person, come to the inner city location and we'd be able to help you. During the pandemic, we were able to evolve our application process, the intake process, everything, so that everything can be done virtually. And so a lot of folks go through our program virtually now, which has expanded our reach, but of course, still offering that in-person option for those who have barriers with accessing technology. During that time, we were also really able to evolve Community Bridge to embed financial empowerment interventions. And so how does that look like? First of all our frontline staff in the program are trained to be financial coaches. And they take a 4-day training, and this training was created in partnership with Prosper Canada. Prosper Canada, if you don't know, they're the nation's leading financial empowerment guru. So we wanted to make sure that staff are well equipped with understanding the basics of financials, and then being able to how to have those conversations directly with participants. So someone comes in, oh, sorry, not done yet. So one of that piece is first they're sitting down with our coach. They figure out their situation. Why are they there? Is it just about, managing their income? Are there other barriers that possibly need advocacy with the landlord? So negotiating with landlords. They do a budget. This is really important because we want to ensure that they're sustainable in their household. If they create a budget and we notice that they cannot sustain that housing, it's impossible. Their income definitely does not outweigh their expenses. We would then let them know that they have to move to a more affordable place, and we would support with first month's rent and damage deposit. And so this, again, is really about making sure that they're sustainable. If we help them 1 month, we don't want to see them next month in that same situation. So once that budgeting and sustainability component is done, we then work on creating 2 financial goals and all the steps that are needed, looking at what benefits that they can access and supporting with those benefits. And then again, issuing that interest-free loan paid directly to, usually it's a landlord or also a utility provider. And then the main piece of this is we want to make sure the program is working. We want to be able to support folks in a longer term. So we look at 1 month, 3 month, 6 month checkups. And so these checkups are phone calls, and we first figure out how is their housing situation. Are they still housed? Do they have a need for any other access to supports. And so we'd be able to make those referrals or supports at that time. This has been a challenge because we are alone. In the many of the years that we've been operating, a lot of people would not want to answer our phone calls because of that loan. They were worried that we were asking for that money and they hadn't paid. And so we've been really mindful about the language that we're using. Oh, shoot. Sorry, I know we just froze. But we've been mindful about doing our follow-up calls and making sure language is upfront, that those follow-up calls are not related to loan repayments. We're not even going to talk about the loan repayments. And in the last 6 months, we've piloted using gift cards as an incentive to answer our phone calls. And we've seen an increase of 80% of people returning our phone calls. So it definitely has worked, and we're seeing a 93% housing retainment rate, which is an amazing indicator that the program does work. And you can just see a little bit of that last bullet. We were able to assist more than 500 people last year. So one of our success stories, we see a variety of people, but this person, and this is actually an example of many, was a senior citizen who lost his rent money due to a phone scam and got an eviction notice. He was living month to month, so we couldn't cover those expenses. So we are able to help him with fraud prevention, make sure that that doesn't happen again. We also looked at applying for the rental assistance benefit to boost his income, and then did those follow-up calls. So this is a great example. We see a lot of different people. So seniors that were defrauded. We see, single parents that are just falling behind bills. We see someone that lost their job and EI doesn't kick in. And we see people that are also struggling with, addiction to substances or to gambling. And so then providing those supports as well to ensure that they can sustain their housing. Now going into financial empowerment. And so what does that look like at Bissell? And so one of those is offering financial literacy workshops. This is open to the public in our community space. Our topics range from budgeting, taxes, credit, debt, fraud, benefits, RSPs, savings, and teaches participants about money and financial literacy. We also offer internal literacy workshops to different programs, like our employment programs. We'll walk in and do a session there. And then we run a drop-in tax service. And so every Monday throughout the entire year, we're able to support people with filing their taxes. This is in partnership with E4C in the Canada Revenue Agency. And we make it as barrier-free as possible. So just, the one thing we really need, of course, is that SIN number. And then we can do the rest. We can file up to 10 years. We've seen really amazing returns for folks. And last year we saw $6 million. And just those are our two kind of participant-facing programs. But in that background, as I mentioned previously, all our frontline staff, so not just in housing, but in mental health and employment and family services, they are required to take our 4-day training. So we go into financial basics and financial coaching so that frontline staff are also equipped with talking about budgeting, taxes, credit, debt, fraud. A lot of folks that come to work with us, they may not have that financial literacy themselves. So we want to ensure that frontline staff are equipped with that so that they can better support folks in their own case management. Because as we know, money involves almost all aspects of our life, no matter what program you're working in. Income is something that we want to support in financial literacy. This is a really amazing good news story. So we had someone facing houselessness. They came into our tax clinic and not realizing that we could file 10 years of taxes, but we noticed he hadn't. And so we were able to do all 10 years and get backdated, GST benefits over almost $23,000 we were able to receive for this gentleman. And this allowed him to find permanent housing. And we're able to equip him with that financial literacy by making those referrals to different programs so that he can manage that large sum of money in a manageable way so that he can save a large portion of that. So here we have some statistics from the 2022-2023 year.
More than 500 people assisted with the community bridge program, excuse me. More than 2,100 individuals connected to a housing resource through the outreach housing team. So that is our diversion and our housing first team. More than 6 million in tax returns to community members, and more than 1,200 housed through all Bissell housing programs, which is really great.
Okay, so we just went through a lot of information, but we welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Kendra and Katrina. That was a really great presentation with some fantastic information and statistics. You know, the retention rates and then the housing rates are just really fantastic. I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want to do this people entering their questions in the chat, or do you want them to maybe put up their hands?
You know, whatever is most comfortable for people, but yeah, chat is useful, then we can see it right away. But if someone wants to unmute themselves, definitely feel free to do so.
Thanks, Joanna.
It was a really nice comment, Joanna. Thank you. Yeah, maybe while we're waiting for folks to throw in some questions, maybe I'll ask some questions. Like one thing I'm very curious about is you talked about that importance in the financial empowerment side. How many folks who come through the programs do you have a measurement of this? Do you have a sense of this, of how many of them just needed that financial empowerment education to retain their housing? Like how many folks do you figure just needed that education bit in order to ensure that their housing can remain stable?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We don't have formal stats, so this is just kind of from my own experience. I do know that Community Bridge, we see a lot of folks that are just living on really tight budgets. I'm probably close to at least half of those is that kind of situation. And so equipping them with how to budget, equipping them with tools that they can use in the future, those financial goals is a really crucial piece. And then I know throughout Bissell, we've had close to 1,000 financial coaching sessions that have been provided by frontline staff. So that just kind of shows the large need for it and the support that's being offered.
Thanks for that, Ken or Katrina. Yeah, we got some questions pouring in now. Candace is asking, how can organizations partner with these programs for their clientele?
I can speak to the diversion work. So we do have a diversion email that I get a lot of organizations coming through to see how they can connect with housing, and that's diversionhousing@bissellcenter.org. Connecting with me directly, again, my email will be at the end of this presentation. And we also have organizations that often attend our housing workshops just to figure out like a little bit more about what we do.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there is a lot of information on our website. So kind of the key person for each role. So our key connect for our taxes, for Community Bridge. Like I mentioned, Community Bridge is accessible virtually, so anyone can access that. So we always encourage other agencies to support folks with that application process, the initial one. But we're always available for phone calls. Our teams are available for that to walk you through. And always looking at ways to create partnerships within the community. And how that may look.
So I got another question here. It's showing unknown user on mine, so apologies that I don't have your name here. But they're asking, can the financial literacy training be made available to external community supports as well in the future?
Yes, I love that question. That's actually what we've really been trying to work on in the last year. We've noticed and we've heard from the community service providers that this is a gap in other agencies for frontline support. And our training was created in partnership with E4C and IAAW as well, so other service providers. And so right now we're looking more at capacity and the funding opportunities to be able to explore that. But we are making that a priority.
So here's a really great question from Faye. How do you get started working with landlords, especially landlords that may not want to work with your clients?
I think that really comes from like an advocacy and education piece. Some landlords like maybe not aware. So we always come from like a client-centered place, understanding that the individual is an individual. Also, being confident, I think, in our ability as like an agency and the supports that we provide, and that we are putting people through the right program. So if it is light touch, such as community bridge or support or referral, like knowing that their housing is sustainable. And if we are going with those higher intervention programs, such as Housing First, really having the confidence in our ability and our follow-up teams and our landlord relations to maintain those relationships.
Looks like this one's going to be specifically for Katrina. It's a bit of a longer one, so if you need me to break it up, let me know, Katrina. But from Julia here, for the Community Bridge program, if participants have used the program in the past, are they able to apply again? And with the follow-up support for those who access Community Bridge, if it was in the last 6 months, is there a contact we can give people who are facing eviction again?
Yeah, good question. So we try to be a one-time stop, but of course that's not always the case. It is case by case. If someone comes back to us 1 month after, obviously they may not be in a sustainable place. So we have to look at how they got into that situation again, and how, we almost let that happen. So no, we're not always a one-time. It is case by case. Especially if we've been running for now almost 10 years. If someone accessed our supports, 5 years ago, we're not going to hold that against someone. And so case by case. And then for those who have access within the 6 months, yes, usually it's the initial community bridge support worker that they were working with that they can connect with. But we also have kind of an intake role where they can connect with the intake, and then they would then transfer the message or the participant to the correct person. So yes, there is support for them within that 6 months.
Okay, that finishes up the questions in the chat for now, but we definitely still have some time. So if you have any more questions, please throw them in. Maybe I'll throw a couple more questions to the team here because I'm a very curious person. I'm curious about like the process folks go through in these lighter touch programs, especially compared to something as formalized as Housing First. Like, is there a formalized like step-by-step process that folks still need to go through, or is it very highly personalized depending on the case? Like, what do those steps look like for folks?
For diversion programs, it's highly personalized. It's very, very case by case. If it's kind of trying to prevent houselessness before it happens. So yeah, it really is individualized to that like person's needs and what their current support network looks like as well. I know our diversion work and community bridge is quite like intertwined. So we do a lot of referrals to community bridge when it is financial assistance that's required. And then on the, if it's not financial assistance, is really about connecting people with resources and making sure that those support, they have that support network that they need. And sometimes just like even advocacy to landlords or coaching people through the process of like looking for housing, understanding the Residential Tenancies Act, even sometimes even just where to look for housing.
And for community bridge, it is quite process oriented in the sense that we do have, required steps that someone needs to take in order to access our supports. We are an interest-free loan, and so we want to ensure that, required documents are submitted, but also being, client-centered. So making sure that if someone has barriers in accessing those documents or accessing any point of our process, that we're there to support them in managing and overcoming those barriers. And then we are very participant centered once they do, those financial coaching sessions. Those are very geared to that individual. And so really working at their situation, what do they need support with? What are their goals? Ensuring that they're leading that conversation.
Thank you for that. Kendra, you said something that kind of piqued my interest where you said, if folks are coming through diversion, you'll refer over to community bridge if they need that financial assistance side of things. I'm kind of curious, like how often your programs encounter folks that you need to then refer to much higher touch programs, something like Housing First or supportive housing. Like, do you have a sense of like what percentage of folks you have to like refer up there, or like is that even a thing that happens through your programs?
It absolutely does. I couldn't give you like a percentage right now, but if you think of diversion workers or housing navigators, they kind of work as like a triage system. So if something is maybe kind of beyond their scope or further support is needed, then they will refer to the appropriate program. So if maybe somebody is experiencing chronic houselessness and housing first would be the better option for them, then they would connect directly with our outreach housing team. If they are just coming into a workshop and they're saying, like they got an eviction notice because they couldn't pay rent for this month, then we do like a direct handoff to Katrina's team. So there is quite a bit of like collaboration and partnership, I would say, probably almost daily. But the good thing is we have all of those programs and supports like in-house at Bissell Center. So we really are able to support people with their need, like generally in the moment.
Okay, thank you for that, Kendra. That's a great answer there. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers off all the questions that I have too. I really want to encourage the audience to, throw in your questions. Let us know if there's anything else that you're curious about with Community Bridge, with Diversion, with our housing workshops, even with financial empowerment. Actually, maybe housing workshops is something I can ask about too. How many people are we seeing on average at every housing workshop? And how often are we encountering people at the housing workshops who can then be directly triaged into Diversion or into Community Bridge?
I would say with every workshop, we're probably seeing about 10 to 20 individuals. We were also really intentional about making sure that we were covering areas of the city as not everybody is comfortable coming to a downtown location. So that's why we were very mindful. We have our housing workshops also at Abbotsfield, EPL, Strathcona, and Westmount. Those external locations, still we've got great collaboration here at Bissell. So if our housing navigator is seeing anybody that maybe they can't work with, they'll connect directly with a program that might be a better fit or more appropriate.
Maybe something with like the housing or the housing workshops, or even the financial empowerment workshops, because they are a little bit more open, public facing, and just like, hey, come on by and see what you can learn, see what you can check out. How important are those kind of like open-ended touch points to connecting with folks who do need a lot more help? Like, do you think that like these pieces of just people facing extra programs have been like crucial to making sure that like folks can find their way to Diversion or find their way to Community Bridge?
Yes, I think it's also a matter of accessibility. We want to ensure that we're accessible in different venues. And so being able to offer programs to the public is a great way to do that instead of going through like the formal referral system or whatever program they're trying to access. And so we see a lot of folks that we wouldn't usually see in our typical Bissell programs, which is really nice. And so financial literacy, we're also looking at doing virtual workshops as well, because that's what we've noticed. Okay, we're offering in-person supports, but like Kendra mentioned, not everyone is comfortable coming to the downtown location. And so to be able to reach more people, to be more accessible, we're now looking at offering that virtual support.
That's something that's kind of curious to me with like, not comfortable coming down to the downtown location, because these, if you look at a lot of external people who try to talk about these issues, they really do focus in on the downtown where I think maybe that's not represented properly. So, I mean, can you talk about maybe like how widespread you're seeing this in the city? Like, what areas of the city are you touching on most often when it comes to housing people, when it comes to helping people with these programs? Like, where are you seeing these things and how widespread are you noticing it?
Well, Community Bridge, it's spread throughout the entire city and elsewhere. We see actually a lot of people, unfortunately, we don't have the funding to support people outside of the city of Edmonton, but we do have folks coming from other areas, Sherwood Park or, more rural areas to get support. And so it's definitely not a centralized demand. Our Nova Plaza office, that's actually where our housing office is located, where we can meet participants for appointments. And so Nova Plaza, if you don't know, it's on 118th Ave and 89th Street, so a little bit more on the north side. And so that also allows us to create another option for people to access our services. And then, like Kendra mentioned, with those housing workshops, we're really mindful about ensuring that different parts of the city, using Edmonton Public Library as a venue to monitor that accessibility and support. So it's available citywide, because we know the demand is citywide.
I kind of want to like ring the bell like it's last call to see if there's any other questions coming in from folks. But maybe my last question is, how do you like if somebody has been evicted from somewhere and the landlord does not want to work with them, what are some of the factors that you take into consideration when you're looking at other rental options, looking at other landlords? How what are those factors that you kind of like look at and measure up to see if like this client of Community Bridge or Diversion would be kind of a good fit for this rental option over here?
I think that's where like our housing navigators are so knowledgeable, because they know landlords and know like who's going to be doing the credit checks, who's doing criminal record checks, who generally tends to work with Bissell Center or has like a good relationship with Bissell Center. So they really kind of just like pull from their knowledge toolbox, I guess, on which landlords even might be a good fit for which person. Obviously, it's always like a client-centered choice, though. We're always including community members in those conversations, with also being mindful of like sustainability, affordability, and sometimes even just the area of the city. Somebody might be more successful in their tenancy in a different area of the city where maybe they were used to hanging out. So there's a lot of creativity in it, though, but definitely it's always a client-centered choice.
I'm glad I rang the bell for last call, because Allison just sent in a really good question here. I'm just going to read it out verbatim for you folks. As a general resource, I've seen a rental listing for clients at Boyle Street. I'm not sure if that's an overall community shared resource, but wondering if you keep a listing at Bissell and if there's an option for anyone to view, for example, people not necessarily signed up or just trying to spread things word of mouth who can view these lists. I think I've seen those emails come around fairly often with the affordable rentals and apartment listings. But is this something that the public can view? Is this something that we were able to share out?
Absolutely. Our affordable apartment weekly listings are updated just like as that every week. So we do have like an email distribution group. Again, you can connect with me via email if you want to be a part of that group. Our housing navigators always have them in hand, and they're handing them out at workshops. You can come down to Bissell's community space. The community space staff have them on hand as well. So yeah, just feel free to connect with me and I can make sure you're a part of that.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'm sure this audience is sick of me peppering you folks with questions. So I just want to make sure everybody sees the contact info here. So if you want to get a hold of Katrina for questions about Community Bridge or financial engagement or financial empowerment, apologies, that's your email there. If you're looking at some questions or want to get connected with Diversion, there's Kendra's email, and then of course we also have the general email. So if you're not quite sure who you're trying to reach out to, there's the general email. Our folks there monitoring that one always know where those can go. An unknown user shared. Oh yeah, they shared a really nice resource here. Thank you for sharing that. Apologies that I can't see your name on the chat here, but yeah, this is a really great resource. Thank you for the nice comment there. Okay.
Awesome.
Again, everybody.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for facilitating. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Kendra, for some great information, a great presentation. Really appreciate it. And thank you for everybody for attending. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn about this. And yeah, hope you're taking in some great presentations for Housing Month this month.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.